might know my guest best as the Spoony One at thespoonyexperiment.com. He is best known for reviewing video games, B-movies, and just about anything in geek culture. He has also starred in the unbelievably well-financed online films Kick-Ass Yeah, Suburban Nights, and To Boldly Flee, and has allowed me as director to abuse him more than once on every single one of them. Please welcome the incredibly awesome Noah Antwiler. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for bringing me out here, and thank you for abusing me in many of your films. I've been knocked out twice on set in your films, and I've enjoyed every single second.
Trust me, the pleasure was all mine. Okay, we'll just go right into the elephant in the room, like what people want to hear about and want to talk about. Years ago, there was a splitting of the ways between you and I that caused a lot of controversy and a lot of talk. People were going on Twitter and speaking about all sorts of things. So I figure it made sense right here, right now, to talk about it. Why the hell did you like Last Action Hero? Because that film is a piece of shit.
You know, I called you out on this a long time ago, and to this day, I do not understand why you don't get the fact that it's an intentional lambasting of Arnold Schwarzenegger of his own career.
It is, but it's not a good one.
It took courage of him to do that, and the thing is, it still holds up today, more so than it did last time.
Having dogs stack on top of each other? Like, where in the Schwarzenegger movie was that? What guy had a happy face in his eyeball?
That was even better because Charles Dance not only delivered one of the best performances of his career, it actually
Really? In Last Action Hero?
Yes! By the way, how dare you impugn Charles Dance in any one of his performances, because he still stands today as one of the best actors working ever. It's like making fun of Tim Curry in any one of his performances.
Okay, Tim Curry, that's kind of different. That you can't bet. Even when Tim Curry's awful, he's amazing.
This is what I'm talking about. You can't make fun of Charles Dance ever like that.
Until I see him in drag, then maybe I'll agree with you. But until
Charles
then,
Dance?
Yes. Because Tim Curry did it and was still not credible, but incredibly entertaining.
Well, give it time. But
It'll happen. It'll probably happen.
But still, I mean, it is remarkable that Schwarzenegger, even back then, was willing. Can you imagine any actor today be willing to just essentially destroy their own career on film like that? It's amazing. But
well, anyway, I think we've abused this joke long enough. Let's go. You just want to keep going. Let's keep going.
This is serious. Serious.
Okay, but speaking of reviewing, how did you get into this trade? Was it something you always wanted to do, or did you fall into it?
Isn't it always the way? It's by accident. It's you never want to like set out into wanting to get into sports or entertainment. I started doing this mainly to just make my friends laugh. I wanted to start out doing a Mystery Science Theater fan video, you know, because I love Mystery Science Theater 3000, and so I started off building robots, which sucks because I have no idea how to build robots. So I had my friends do it for me. No, I helped, but so I built one robot, and then I asked my friends, hey, you guys want to watch some really crappy movies with me several times? And then sit in my insanely hot garage in front of a screen and then film it as we watch the movie again.
Did you do like the green screen, the whole thing like you were
really crappy screen, yeah. And they were like, no. They flat out said like, no. And I'm like, well, crap. Because now I had this robot and I had a camera. I bought a camera, which was like $300, which is a lot of money.
Probably should check with them before you went out and
and built the robot and all that. But yeah, so now I had this camera and this robot and this big interest in bad movies, and I had nothing to do with them. So I started doing like movie commentaries, like Riff Tracks before Riff Tracks was done, really bad ones too. But I was like, now I wanted to do something, so I just decided to do a review of like Bayou Billy, like a really bad Nintendo game. I knew that James Rolfe was doing like a video game, but mine was much less structured. You know, in fact, mine was unstructured. But the reception was
much like the game.
Yeah.
So very fitting.
Yeah. So I did a couple, and nobody was watching them. I posted them on a message board I was working on. And then I did Final Fantasy VIII. And then all of a sudden, I pissed people off because nobody had dared kick Final Fantasy VIII before. That was like sacred cow. Anything Final Fantasy was sacred. So all of a sudden, viewership just skyrocketed because I started getting hate mail because, again, sacred cow. I was getting the worst kind of hate mail, death threats. I don't know. Nobody was doing it seriously, but the kind of internet vitriol where it's like the only language people speak on the internet is hyperbole. So one of my favorite hate mails was one of the first hate mails I got was, "I hope you die getting hit by a truck full of cancer." Best imagery ever.
That is creative.
So
I just thought that cancer can be like physical and put on a truck to slam into you.
I don't know if it was driving, but like so. All of a sudden my YouTube viewership was just at the time just amazing. So I think it was kind of the Howard Stern effect, where like people were watching and getting furious, and then showing their friends like, "God, see what this prick is saying about Final Fantasy."
He became the Fox News of YouTube.
So I was essentially kind of trolling, and without meaning to, I was serious. I really hated this game, but I was like, as soon as I saw the hits, I was like, I gotta keep talking about this game. So, again, I wasn't doing it for the hits. I was doing it because it was kind of amusing me and amusing a lot of people. So, yeah, I started doing that, and it kept going, and my viewership kept going, and people kept watching because maybe they didn't like what I was saying, but they really wanted to hear more of what I had to say. And so from there, it just kind of kept going, and eventually people started to, they realized I think I was kind of a funny guy. And then where it really started to kick off was when I discovered Red Brown movies for myself. Your Hunter from the Future was really, I think, where it kind of locked in. Whereas, this is a job. I can discover bad movies and show people the bad movies and games that I from my childhood.
He's still the best Captain America in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what they're doing with these new ones, but I mean, it's no Red Brown.
If he doesn't wear a motorcycle helmet with wings and a plastic shield, it's not Captain.
Why do you feel negative reviews get much more attention than positive reviews? I mean, we both focus on negative reviews, and we know it gets the views. But why? Why is that, you think?
People always ask me, like, I have a reputation now for Spoony hates everything and stuff like that. They ask me, why don't you review things you like? Why don't you review good things? It's very hard to be funny when you're being complimentary. This movie is so friggin' good. It's awesome. I love it so much. It's so good. It's like better than cheeseburgers. How do you be funny about really good things? You can have a lot of really awesome, metaphors and comparisons to really crappy things. You can be insulting and say what you want to do to things that you hate. You be violent towards things you hate. It's so hard to be. How do you? You can be funny about things you like, kind of in an ironic way. I've done this for April Fool's videos, but how do you do like funny sketches about things that are awesome?
The closest I've ever found is going so over the top with how much you like them. But even then, like you said, that can kind of get you only so much mileage because that comes from the person is clearly a nut in how much they enjoy this.
Yeah, which is why your character, the bum, is so funny. But the thing is, he's actually saying things he likes about bad things. Because it's an inversion. Because the people who watch it know that the things he's reviewing are bad. You're insulting it by sarcasm.
Yeah, not even realizing what he's saying is actually bad about the movie.
So you can do critical reviews of positive things, seriously, but yeah, I have done it. Like when I reviewed like the first Beastmaster movie, I liked it, but the thing is, I was still nitpicking it. But at the end, I was like, this is still a great movie. But it was kind of a guilty pleasure type movie because even back then, the really good fantasy movies were still really cheesy, and you had to acknowledge that.
I mean, it is difficult, but I've kind of done the same thing with like with like Hook and Commando. It's I love those movies, even the really dumb, horrible parts. I love them so much. And yeah, there always seems to be like you have to at least have a passion for it, whether you love it or hate it.
Yeah.
In order for it to be entertaining.
Yeah, I did that with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I love that movie, but Ferris Bueller is the devil.
I always say Matthew Broderick is the devil, but no, that's very good. I can see that. You, of course, review a lot of games. One of the most popular series you've gone over is the Ultima games. Why have you had such a strong connection with that? Because while they were popular, it's not something people were craving to have this be reviewed, and you've done pretty much all of them, and they're extremely popular.
Yeah. It's mainly something I just grew up with. It was like My older brother was playing them. It was really well. It's kind of a series of gaming as old as PC gaming itself. Because as you know, they started off when operating systems didn't have Windows. You still had text prompts. You actually had to invoke your games by typing in the title of the game and stuff like that. So my older brother had, Ultima 3, which was the first one. So it was kind of a bonding experience between, my brother and I. And so I kind of grew up with that. It's kind of the first gaming series I really grew up with. And it's this makes me sound old, but it's a gaming series that the youngins have not really been exposed to ever. And it's a shame because it's one of those gaming series that really has it's kind of one of those classic sci-fi fantasy series that's kind of been forgotten, but has a really lasting like a legacy kind of thing. So like, it's kind of weird that maybe in a sense like Star Trek, the original Star Trek, Star Trek's been rebooted. It's almost like the old Star Trek's going to kind of fade out. Babylon 5. You don't really know Babylon 5 anymore. So it's a nostalgia thing. It's like I don't want it to be forgotten. Because I grew up with that. It's a great series of games, even when it was crap. It's like still grew up with that, and it's coming back, or at least there's an MMO coming out, and so I like to think that in some small way I helped bring that piece of history back, or at least I helped preserve it. And it was kind of funny. It's like one of the primary traumatic forming memories of my childhood was the Ultima 9 thing, where it's like one of the biggest shocks to my pop culture system was the What's a Paladin thing.
What's a Paladin?
Khan! Was where I realized how badly they could screw something up. And so, but the thing is, I couldn't tell that story without telling every story. Mm-hmm. And this was like a mission. I realized then what I had to do.
So was everything, the whole reason you wanted to do the games was to build up to Ultima 9?
I had to.
Wow, that's quite dedication. That's 9 games.
For one gag. For one. But the thing is, because it wasn't that serious. It wasn't that serious. You're like, oh, what's a paladin? For one, if I just showed you Ultima 9, you'd be like, so what? But the thing is, you had to see all the stuff that led up to it. And then it'd be like if you went on that ride for all 9 games, and then this guy who'd been on like all these like 11 games up to that point, there's 9, and then there's like a couple side games. You're like, what? Then it'd be like Luke Skywalker asking at the end of Return of the Jedi, "What's a Jedi?" Like, you're like,
or what's the Force?
Yeah, you'd be like, what are you doing all this time? What are you talking about? Like, exactly. So like, you would hit the roof. You would run out of the theater screaming, like, what clown made this movie? So like, and besides that, it wasn't like I was wasting my time doing these reviews. They were all worth doing. So when I realized I had to do, I wanted to take you on this journey. It was a journey worth taking. So it was awesome. I liked doing that. And so I'm glad people found it. I'm glad people liked going on it with me, and they learned something. And so I liked the fact that people told me that they went back and discovered these games for themselves.
Well, and they're definitely, you were talking about having an influence, or hopefully had influence, and maybe it coming back. You actually got a chance to meet the creator of Ultima. You went to his place, Richard Garriott. You went on his turf to talk with him. And how did that happen, and how surreal of an experience was that?
I could not believe it. He contacts me. He's making a game, an MMORPG called Shroud of the Avatar. And out of nowhere, essentially, he contacts me saying, "I saw your videos." And I was thinking the next words out of the email were going to be like, "and I will see you in court." But no, he said, "I laughed my ass off." And I'm like, "and I will see you in court, and I will laugh my ass off even now." And he says, "even when you hated the games, you hated them because you loved them so much that it hurt you when they were bad." And he says, it made me understand, because I didn't understand at the time, and why they were bad. I didn't even understand like why, when I did like What's a Paladin and all that stuff, I was just trying to inform new gamers what a paladin was. I didn't even think at the time, this is stupid. I should just have the avatar ask what this is, because it's like a screenwriting thing. This is something a character should not ask at this point. So he's like, it helped me, and so like it's something I actually ask, my developers, my programmers now, is to think about this sort of thing. So he says it actually is helpful to me. So he says, you've actually helped kind of bring this back into, consciousness, So he's like, I want you to be part of this. So he actually made me part of a Kickstarter goal for Shred of the Avatar, which I thought was amazing. And so when they met the Kickstarter goal, one of the things was a roast of himself. He was going to bring me down to Austin to the studio to have. We didn't really know what the form of the roast would take, so I decided it would be like a roast interview. So he took me down there, and I kind of did a somewhat hostile style interview. It was good fun, but it was really remarkable because I didn't know what to expect, and he's such a nerd, and I know, right? But what I mean is, he takes me. We did the interview, and he takes me down to Britannia Manor, and he literally has a Renaissance fair.
It's a real manor. Pretty much.
He has a castle. He has the biggest geocaching site in the world. He has a lighthouse tower and stuff like that. You actually have to go on a quest to reach his geocaching. It's an old.
Is there pits of lava and objects moving up and down?
Kind of, yes. You have to go on an all-day quest solving riddles to get to the geocaching thing. Really, you have to infiltrate his manor and do this. There may be minotaurs. I don't know.
This is a guy who is either living life incredibly wrong or incredibly right.
Yeah.
To be doing that.
So he has a literal village around his manor. And so he takes us down there and he points over there and he goes, "That's my jousting list." Which is the first time those words have been uttered in 200 years. And I'm like, jousting list? He goes, "Oh, yeah. I let the International Jousting League use my jousting list every time they come around here." And I'm like, "There's a jousting league?" He's like, "Oh, yeah." And so he's like, "That is a replica of the Globe Theater." I go, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I let the community theater use it." I'm like, "Well, that's good." And so, yeah, he takes me around, and Angry Joe is with me. He's helping me do the camera. He's like, "Joe, do you want to fight with these axes?" And so he hands him
I can't see him being down for that at all. I see him just being like, "No, I am a pacifist. I do not believe in violence. I'm gonna stay as far away from this as possible."
So he hands Angry Joe these cosplay foam axes, and Joe is like, "I'll take two." And so and so I'm like, "Joe, don't hit Richard Garriott with the axes. If you hurt Richard Garriott, he's like a millionaire. He's been into space. He has an orbital laser." And I'm like, he's like, "Oh, come on, Spoony!" And he goes up on the stage of the Globe Theater, and he starts beating the shit out of Richard Garriott with battle axes. And Richard Garriott is just laying into him with a sword and another battle axe. And I'm sitting there wishing I had my camera. I'm trying to get my stuff ready to shoot a sketch with him, and I'm getting so desperate to get my camera out. But I sit there and I'm just watching Angry Joe and Richard Garriott beating the crap out of each other with battle axes on the stage of the Globe Theater. And he looks so happy. And I'm like, this is Richard Garriott, a millionaire. He's been into space. And he just wants playmates. That's he wants people to play on his medieval village. And he just wants to make games. And I was like, this is what the experience of going to see Richard Garriott, Lord British. He's Lord British. This is what it's like going to see Richard Garriott, the guy who designed the Ultimate Games. And I'm like, this is a gamer. This is what it's like to meet this guy. After all these years, that's what it's like. So I stopped being scared of this guy because he's beating the crap out of Angry Joe with a foam battle axe. Yep.
I mean, that is such a surreal experience. Have you ever told him, just meeting you is just... Did you ever tell him what an experience it was meeting him?
Oh, yeah. He understood what it was like, the experience of growing up with this stuff was like, because he grew up with it, too. He was basically like a starting college student when it... So he learned just as much growing up with it, about programming and business, essentially, because the business kind of screwed him over as much as anything, the story of the later Ultima games, the reason they were crap is essentially, big business kind of bought him out and made the games crap. So, that we all learned a lot about life, as things progressed. And so, yeah, he understood what it was like for a gamer to meet him, and so, but yes, it was kind of a unique perspective for each of us, for the student to meet his master, and the master to finally see something that, what he had created out of a gamer, you know what I mean? So, which was kind of this messed up man-child kind of. I love your work, but I hate you.
One of my favorite moments in any of your reviews in one of the Ultimate games, you break character, you kind of break the fourth wall,
wow.
You go and you grab all the games, and you go into great detail about growing up with it and what it meant to you and what it meant to your brother, and you really went back in time to your childhood and just talked about the experience of doing this. And as a reviewer, I love anyone that can do something really different and just totally sort of break out of character in a way that they haven't before. But that does raise the question, when is a game just a game, and when is it something more? When is any of media just media, and when is it something really, really important?
I was nervous about doing that to the point where I really considered cutting it entirely, because that's the sort of thing you can only do once, in my opinion. I really didn't want to break character. At the same time, though, I was like, this is really important to me, because it was. That was redundant as hell. No, I wanted to carry out how important it was, and that was the only way, was to be like, okay, we're stopping to be Spoony here. Like, this is important. You can't screw something like this up. You've come this far. You've come like 11 games into this series. You can't do something like this. It's too important. But you're like, but it's just a game. It's a game. Get over it. It's like, you screw up a game. But and this is something like, and this goes to something like Star Wars. You're like, why are you so mad about Star Wars? The prequels, Jar Jar Binks. It's a movie. So a movie sucks. Get over it. And to a degree, you're right. But it's a piece of culture. We grew up with this stuff. It's important to us. It's parts of our childhood. Or even if it's not our childhood, it's a part of us. So when you screw that up, you screw parts of us up. Kind of. Or you screw up something important to the country, or you've made something wrong. At least to us, So you can argue whether or not, it's whether or not it really is that important, but it can be offensive, like it's still important to us, and so sometimes you have to just. Sometimes it has a bigger importance than just being a movie or just being a game, to where it becomes, when you've come this far, when you have a series that big, that expansive, like Star Wars. Star Wars is probably a better example, because it became a phenomenon. It became part of the culture. Star Trek. You can't just do something to Star Trek where Captain Kirk asks, "What's a Klingon?" out of nowhere. And they came dangerously close to that with the reboots, where fans could have easily rebelled if they'd have done something completely wrong. In fact, I'm amazed they didn't when Spock yells "Khan."
we were about ready to walk out at that point.
In fact, had they done that, it handled even. I almost did. You can see how it really could have been like the most hated moment ever. You could see rage coming out of this. You could see like people burning this movie in the streets had it gone any worse. And you'd be like, it's just a movie. And you'd be like, no, it's not just a movie. This is Star Trek. This is common parlance. This is common usage. We use phrases like, raising your shields, beam us up, Scotty. We use stuff like this every day. So when you screw this up, you screw parts of culture up. So Ultima series, that's not common usage, but that's part of me. So when I took part of that and they screwed it up, I was like, I grew up with this. I'm 33 years old. Oh my God. you screwed it up. You know, that was like, no, toss the game. You know, so like, to me, it was important. Obviously, it was important. I did all these videos to lead up to this, and I was mad. At the time, I was mad. I'm still mad. I went over to Richard Garriott to tell him, I'm mad. You know, like, why did you do this? And he told me why. You know, it was a little bit beyond his control. But he's like, I didn't know. I didn't know any better. You know, it's like, I wrote this with the best of intentions, but I was stupid. And you told me why I was stupid. I won't do it again. And I'm like, better not. But yeah, I mean, that's the things kind of go past just being a game sometimes. But yeah, for the most part, what we do for like Blood Rain or something like that, when they adapt a crappy video game, is it worth really getting mad over? No. Yeah. But sometimes, you know, if Uwe Boll were to take hold of Star Wars, never happened. But yeah. When Michael Bay gets hold of Transformers, it kind of is worth getting angry over because they deserve better, don't they? A little bit. Yeah. So
I mean, anything taken out of the hands of Michael Bay, I'm pro for.
But they deserve better, and it kind of is worth getting angry over. I think so. But yeah, your mileage may vary. It does. But that's why it's worth getting angry over.
You have a another very well-known passion for, as you said before, Final Fantasy. Those really took off and got people talking about it. Like you said, death threats, truckload of cancer, all of that wonderful
To be
imagery.
fair, not that many death.
But for that, was it a similar connection you had with Ultima, or was Final Fantasy just a totally different thing?
You know, really, I think the Final Fantasy thing got overblown to the point where I became the Final Fantasy guy. It's fun, kind of seeing how far I can take that one. Final Fantasy VIII was really the first one that I just didn't like. And everyone else around me seemed to really like it. I just couldn't understand why. And I just wanted to talk about it when I did the reviews. But yeah, it really snowballed from there, and I was like, this is amazing. And then Final Fantasy X came out, and I hated it because it had one of the most annoying protagonists ever. I'm like, screw this. And yeah, those were the two I really, really hated. And then 13 came out, and I hated it, you know. But nobody liked 13, you know, whatever. But yeah, those are the first two games, and they were so widely loved, I just wanted to destroy them. But yeah, the other games are classics, widely regarded as classics, and rightly so. But yeah, the 8 and 10 are almost universally beloved, and those just happen to be the ones that were like really, really recent and really in my crosshairs at the time. I didn't really have so much of a passion for them. I really wasn't even that protective of the series. Actually, not at all. I'm not like, I love the series so much and I hated the depths to which the series has sunk. I was just playing Final Fantasy VIII going like, wow, this sucks. Why do you like it so much? But people, it was more like a trolling reaction kind of at some point where I was just like, no, this sucks. I'm going to fight you on this. So, yeah, that was less of a fanboy reaction on my part and more of like no, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah, more like me being an ass. I admit it.
Something we both have, I think, experienced is when we review something that's popular at the time, but we don't like, you know, and we don't enjoy, or when we do something that we think is going to be good, but maybe it doesn't have the same reaction we expect. But over time, people come back to it. Why do you think that happens, and what do you think happens in that bit of time?
You mean like you do a review and people don't like it, but over time they go back and they're like, you're right?
Yeah, or they'll quote it, or they'll really enjoy, or they'll even demand more.
Well, what's funny, and people may not believe this at first, but when I started doing reviews, I started doing like written movie reviews for a comic book called Knights of the Dinner Table. And I'm going to go back to Star Wars on this. My first written review was about The Phantom Menace. And I hated it. And I slagged it. Just destroyed it.
Now, for context, when did this come out? Because I know this
Immediately after The Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah, so right at the time we previewed.
Like the day after. And I destroyed it. And I got so much hate mail. So much. They couldn't believe it. They were like, how dare you? How dare you? This movie is fantastic. Because, and people may not remember this, when The Phantom Menace first came out, everyone loved it.
It was critically praised. I remember that. And yeah, I was very confused by that.
Critics, widespread, almost universally loved that movie. Roger Ebert, I forget what the rating was. It was almost like 3.5 stars.
It's either 3.5 or 4. Yeah, it was up there.
It was beloved. Fans loved it. Critics loved it. Everyone loved this movie. I hated it. I almost walked out of the theater. I almost walked out of the theater. It was like 3 minutes before the end, but I couldn't stand it. I wrote a review. I hated it. Hate mail. Universally. And that's when the guy actually hired me on, because it was the Howard Stern thing. I was like, I'm so sorry. People hate this review. I'll stop writing. I said, and he's like, are you kidding me? People are like subscribing like crazy because they hate you so much. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, but the thing is, I was right. Nowadays, people hate that movie. They hate it. But you wouldn't know that at the time because it was like a delirium effect. People walked out of that movie. It was unconscionable at the time, inconceivable that there could be a bad Star Wars movie. If at the time, when Return of the Jedi was the only last Star Wars movie, and I had told you there will be another Star Wars movie and it will be bad, that would be madness. No, that's impossible. But here we are, and I think people walked out of that theater delirious. Just that fight scene was awesome.
That was the one thing I liked in that movie. That is the one thing, maybe because it ended on that note. I don't know. Yeah,
they latched onto that scene because they're like, that music. You could do anything to that music and it'd be awesome. You could order a sandwich. Swipe it. And you'd walk out. You could do, Jerry, Gus Van.
That movie would be amazing with that music, even if they just had on a loop.
Just epic, walking through the desert. And it took months. It took till it reached home video, and they watched it at home, and they just went, "Oh my God, this is terrible." But they turned around, and I was right. But the thing, and I was smug, and I told him I was right. I was like, I hate to be that guy. He said, you know what? I don't. Yeah, I like being. But yeah, that was one of the major things. I don't know if I've reviewed a movie on the show that was. I've had people turn around on like Final Fantasy, but that wasn't my goal. I wasn't like, even though I said it's like I'm going to prove you wrong on Final Fantasy. That wasn't like, I was just kind of breaking balls, But I don't know if I've ever maybe vlogs here and there where I was talking like new RoboCop or Spider-Man, but like I don't know if I've ever done most of the movies that I've reviewed have been like pretty much universally bad, or I've shown people movies like Red Brown movies that I've been like, these are terrible movies, but you should see them. People like them, but I don't know. What about you? Like, you probably, what movies have you turned around on? Have people turned around on for you? Like,
boy, it's not as much movies as much as events. It's stuff like the battle with the nerd when I first started that. Everyone's like, you can't do that. You can't possibly do that.
Well,
and like even the anniversaries, and yet people are always asking for more as well.
Well, people thought so many people thought the feud with the nerd was serious.
Well, even outside of that though, like when we did the big final battle and stuff, you're like, yeah, you might want to wrap this up. I think we're kind of done or whatever. But then, like, not one of the number one questions I ever get: are you going to do more with the nerd? Are you going to have another battle? Are you going to bring that back? So yeah, it's always one of those things where it's like, you just sort of, I always play to my gut. Just like, even if I know I'm going to do something, it's going to get a lot of people disagreeing. Man of Steel is another great example.
Oh, wow.
Where everyone said don't review it. And that's like the most viewed review I've ever done.
You and I got so much heat for that review.
Oh, I think everybody who disliked it did, I think.
That was amazing.
Yeah. I think the only one I got that much backlash was probably Dark Knight Rises. Like,
oh, yeah.
Everyone was just like, like both. In fact, Brad was talking to me, Brad Jones, he was saying, thank God you said that. Because, like, everyone's just coming to me for a while, then you diffuse the fan hate.
Linkara? Pussy.
I think I know where you're going with this, right?
He waited a month to review Man of Steel. We took the firestorm on that one.
And he's like, well, why does everybody, and nobody came to me angry? I don't get, because they all came to us, and now they calmed down.
I said I didn't like that movie, and nobody cared when I said it. I was like, yeah, because they all friggin' torched us on that one. I'm like, they were tired after.
And every once in a while, as Rob says, every once in a while on his Facebook, when he just wants to get a little rise, just sort of play Puppet Master, he'll just say something bad about Man of Steel, and everyone just be like, yeah, just be like, dance, puppets, dance. So I'm kind of the same way with Dark Knight Rises. I'll just to get a little bit of a rise. I might, no pun intended.
I do it with Pacific Rim, which I said was okay, and they're like, no. They're like, it's the best movie ever. Anyway, I just did it again, so. They're going to see this video and be like...
All the comments now are just going to be people saying why Man of Steel, Dark Knight Rises, and Pacific Rim. Even though we like Pacific Rim. Why we're wrong about it.
The hits on this video are going to be amazing.
It's just going to be like a flame war. Dance, puppets, dance!
We just brought the 3 movies up. It's not even going to be about anything we talked about before.
It's just going to be those movies.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Shooting the crossover movies was arduous, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world. Kick-Assy was amazing. I've never run that much in my life over more difficult terrain, but I'm not complaining. That was amazing. Cool. I was one of the only people not to walk away from that injured. If any of the places you would have thought I would have been crippled, it would have been Kick-Assy.